Just so all of you are aware, we're waiting on members who we know will be at least a few minutes late. So you probably have 10 minutes before we'll actually start the trust meeting.
Good morning. I'd like to call the July 2nd meeting of the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. And we do not have our chair or our vice chair with us today. So I'd like to ask the trustees if we could get a nomination to chair this meeting.
I'd like to nominate Laura Johnson.
Second.
Do we need to take a roll call vote on this? Okay, so Trustee Ruiz?
Aye.
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 All right, passes unanimously. I'll turn the meeting over to you, Chairwoman Johnson.
Thank you, Jason. The first item on our agenda today, I should say the next item on our agenda today, is items from the chair. And today we have Chris Tatham here with us from ETC to present our annual customer service survey. Welcome, Chris. Hopefully you didn't have too rainy a drive down here.
No, actually, I got direct when the rain was over yesterday. Some of you for the baseball game.
Very hard to hear Chris. Does anyone know how Chris
Is that better?
microphone?
Moving it?
Oh,
It's probably,
better.
I'll squat down a little bit.
Yeah,
so.
it's because you're
And
tall.
is there a control here? I guess that's the one thing I noticed for, are you going to do that there? Great. Well, it's great to be here, and this was an interesting year, as we all know. One of the greatest values of doing regular research is when you have something like COVID-19 happen, you can really assess the impact that it has. And there's two key groups that we've been surveying regularly now for several years. And one is the general public, or people who don't currently use transit services, to figure out what they think. The other are the people who do. And so I'm going to walk you through the results of those two surveys today. The next slide just is the gee whiz if you're not familiar with our firm. It's now over 1,000 cities around the world. We're now doing work in Africa and Australia and other places globally. And the data that we have, we're able to compare and put into context with what's happening in other places around the world. So that's one of the things, if you have questions or things for us to look at in the context of what's happening in other places, feel free to ask, or we can do that additional research for you. Today I'm going to walk you through the two major survey results, and then at the end, if you have questions, I'll be happy to either try to answer them if I know them. If not, we'll do some additional research and see if we can find the answers that you need. So with that, I'm going to start off with our first survey. And I'll just give you a little background about that survey. It's been done regularly now for several years. I think the very first one we did for you is probably over a decade ago, before Embark was even really established. We've now been doing it on a pretty annual basis. And one of the reasons for doing it is just to think, what does the average person who doesn't use transit service think? And how can you perhaps find out ways to get them to begin using transit? And even if they don't, do they think it's important? So I'm going to walk you through some of the things that we learned this year. And as I said up front, it's particularly important. One of the concerns is did COVID-19 change the view that people who aren't transit dependent have on the importance of transit services? And so those are one of the things that we looked at. The overall sample this year had over 1,200 respondents. We set it up so it was statistically valid for both the city of Oklahoma City. We also surveyed folks who live in Norman, because you're now running services down there. The results aren't perfect, but they have an accuracy of about plus or minus 2.7% at the 95% level of confidence. And that just means if we did the survey 100 times, we'd expect to get the same results within about 3% or less 95 times out of 100. So it's pretty good. As far as the overall findings, the first one is just the perceived priority for public transit. And again, this is of people who do not currently use the service. One of the things that we ask people is, do you feel that Embark's public transit services are valuable to the community? And you'll notice that in the post-COVID, or this was done really the winter of 2020 and early 2021, more than 3 out of 4 people said yes to that question. Few people didn't know, but when you look at the ratio to yeses to no, it's 77% yes to 9% no. So there's a strong view that it is valuable. The other things that we asked were a series of statements. Everything from, and these are level of agreement. So in this case, some of the negatives aren't bad. So riding the bus is too expensive. A lot of folks, that's not a deterrent for them not riding it right now. When you see the high percentage of kind of folks in the middle, or higher percentages of negative, or what's in red. Well, one of the things that stood out to me on this chart is if you look at the top, public transit is important for a thriving community. 83% of people who aren't currently using transit services think that. In fact, more people believe that than they'd prefer to drive rather than use public transportation. So when you think about it, these are people who don't use public transportation. They're more likely to think that it's important to have in a thriving community than to simply drive their car and prefer to drive their car. So that says a lot about it. So at the end of the day, sometimes people want to have services because they believe they're important to have a good community, and that's clearly what we see in the survey results. There's other things on the chart, but I'm not going to go through all of them today, but if you have questions, let me know. The other thing I want to share is just the perceptions of the purpose of public transportation. You'll notice that clearly having a service that supports people who are low income, disabled, kind of your transit dependent or special populations that traditionally need it, is seen by 78% of folks as very important. Only 6% said it's not important. But what I found interesting, again, for Oklahoma City is people don't just see it as a social service to help people who can't get around. The number 2 thing, or second highest, is supporting economic development and access to jobs. So there's really 2 roles that people see who aren't currently riding transit as their reason to have it. It's one to help people who probably need transportation services, but the other is the role it has in economic development and job growth. A few other things that we shared is this the overall important, and this is the big thing that comes for you and city council folks and ultimately taxpayers, is how important is it to fund improved public transportation. 51% or a majority say it's very important. So it's not just a small portion, that's a very high percentage. If you add the somewhat important, you have 2 out of 3 people who think it's very important, somewhat important. Only 6% said it's not important. And again, this is among people who are not currently using transit services in the area. So again, there's a lot of support, and we're finding this information after COVID. And in a lot of markets, one of the challenges was, well, a lot of people are now working at home. Are people still going to think transit's important? Well, clearly in Oklahoma City, people continue to view it as being an important service to provide. And with that, the last couple things that I'll share with you has to do with the perceptions of Embark. And this is really great. I know you transitioned your name and everything a few years ago, and you'll see that 3 out of 4 folks know who you are, so you have strong brand recognition. And this is, again, among people who don't use your services, so you've done a very good job marketing yourselves to the community. And also, this is the part that I think provides the most opportunity moving forward, is that people will consider using transit under the right conditions. And this, a lot of times people think, well, nobody in our community, we're just drivers, it's not our culture. But I usually ask people, have they been to Disney World? They probably have used transit services under the right condition. But when you look at the data, here's some of the things that you have to make sure that we're looking at. It isn't really a cultural phenomenon. For non-riders to use transit, the transit has to be provided at a level that's convenient. If you actually look at here, we ask the likelihood of various factors encourage public transportation use. You'll notice that the top one, the time it takes is faster. Second is the location of stops near where they need to go. The next one is the location of stops where they live. You'll notice you go all the way down to the bottom of the list, it costs less to ride transit. So people aren't making a decision or desiring to ride transit because it's cheaper. They're making decisions to use transit because it's convenient. So as you're designing improvements, particularly if you're trying to reach certain markets in the region or new ridership, thinking about what can you do to make sure that level of service is convenient, high frequency, things like that. That's what's necessary to get people to use it, not necessarily making it a cheap alternative for people. And when we ask folks what the top issues were, you'll see those same 3 rose to the top of the list. So issues, factors related to convenience, if you want to attract people who currently aren't using it to begin using it, the convenience and the improvements in the design, frequency of service will be the key things to focus on. And I think with that, we're going to transition to our rider survey. This was a real challenge. We do surveys for probably 40 transit agencies across the country. And as you can imagine, when COVID-19 started, the necessary changes that needed to be put in place to make people just feel safe when they were using transit were extremely high. And not all systems fared well in their ability to deliver on those expectations that people had. And as a result, many of them saw their transit ridership plummet 80+%. But you all have fared well in that regard, and I think it's because you actually responded very effectively and managed the expectations. And when we looked at your rider survey data, it supports that. So As far as the background for the survey, this survey has been done regularly, not every year, but almost every year since 2016. We've made some modifications to the survey from one year to the next, but overall several of the questions have stayed the same, and it's really to give you an objective assessment for how well you're doing. In fact, you roll out a new light rail system, well, it's brand new, nice and shiny in year one. A lot of people go try it out. Well, over time it gets older, people's expectations change, and so part of doing a survey like this is to make sure you're continually meeting those expectations as they change over time. So as far as this year's survey, we administered it to 1,208 riders, about 1,000 in Oklahoma City, a little over 200 down in Norman, and the overall sample size and accuracy is similar to what we saw in the resident survey at plus or minus 2.5% at the 95% level of confidence. As far as some of the major findings, this is not new, but it was important this year, is that when we looked at overall satisfaction, it remained very high. It's been high in the past, but you'll notice here that across the board, overall concerns, and shown in this case, the red is negative. That reflects people's dissatisfied responses. Overall, very few things have more than 10% or even 15% dissatisfaction. You'll see cleanliness of bus shelters was one of the biggest concerns this year. But for every person who was concerned or gave negative ratings at 18%, if you actually look to the left, you'll see that we had 64% of people giving positive ratings. So over 3.5 times people feeling good about your cleanliness of the shelters is feeling negative. And you see when it overall perceptions of safety, operations of the buses, and overall feeling of safety on board, which was particularly important, not just from a I don't want to get in a crash type of situation, but to actually feel safe was a bigger deal this year because of COVID-19. Those are actually things that you really excelled at. Other systems did not. So I think the way that you kept buses clean, the way you allowed people to feel safe, that you were making sure that they're protected from COVID-19, you did that extremely well, given that those are the two highest areas overall rated on the survey. Some of the other things that we looked at were just perceptions of safe operation of buses, ease of paying for fees, and there were really not a lot of changes if you look from one year to the next. So imagine this was a completely different context this year for people to ride, yet overall satisfaction levels, when you look at the trends, really didn't change at all significantly. So great job to this organization for really sustaining what were already high ratings in a completely different environment. That was a pretty significant accomplishment, which this organization should be very proud of. Moving on, some of the other things you can see, here's just some of the other trends. The cleanliness of bus shelters, you can see actually was the lowest area rated on the survey, but it didn't change that much from 2019. It was only a 3% decrease. So even though that's an area of high dissatisfaction, it didn't necessarily go down because of COVID-19 or the lack of your response to make people feel safe there. A couple other things that we looked at, and this is one of the challenges when you look at the non-rider survey, is remember convenience is one of the things that gets non-riders to start using the service or is most likely to attract them to become transit users. Well, one of the challenges, the way your system is designed right now, people have to take a lot of transfers. So if you go to the next chart, you'll notice we ask people, we've been asking this for a few years, how many transfers they take. And this year you'll see the number of transfers actually decreased. In other words, people going through your transit center, so you're making that better for people to get from one place to the next. But you'll notice whether they took no transfers, one transfers, 2 or 3 or more, and you're doing a better job of getting people through. And whether that was because of this year's environment, we don't know for sure, but I know that's something that you've been working on, and it would suggest that you're making it easier for people to connect from one place to another because the number of transfers required that's being reported by people has gone down significantly. We'll see if that trend continues when we do the next survey, but that really shows you've made some progress at making the system easier for people to use. As far as opportunities for improvement, you'll see on the next chart, one of the things that we look at is both the overall satisfaction rating, but then also what's important to people. And you'll see at the top of the list, buses arriving on time, frequency of service, and courtesy of drivers are the 3 things. So 2 of those 3 have to relate to really how well the system is operating and performing. And the third one, though, is I think one that you can control, which is a nice asset, is frankly your bus drivers can be good ambassadors for your system. And I think sometimes we overlook the value that people can have, but this really suggests that if your bus drivers are good ambassadors, that will help sustain, if not improve, overall satisfaction among the people who are currently driving. And a lot of times when you have the same driver on the same route, they do make relationships with those drivers, and this shows that's important. You'll notice at the bottom of the list, the cleanliness of the transit center, which for many organizations this year was one of their biggest concerns, is at the bottom of the list. And frankly, that's because satisfaction was so high. Most people were not that concerned about it. You see only 2% of the people picked it as a priority. So again, shows that you really responded to some of the concerns that people had about COVID-19 and the safety and cleanliness of operations. Overall, this is just the summary slide. I know I've shared a lot this morning, but for me, the big takeaway is, number one, transit is super important in this community. When over 50%, in this case 51%, think it's important to fund transit services, that's an incredible accomplishment. When you then add another 18%, you're looking at 2 out of 3 residents who don't use transit, thinking it's important to fund. And then when you see yourselves results that show that you've really done a great job sustaining high level of satisfaction in the midst of a year where a lot of people, frankly, were dissatisfied with public transportation services because of concerns related to safety and COVID-19, you've really done a great job of meeting those expectations. So congratulations in both of those areas. And I don't know if there's any questions, but I'd certainly be happy to answer them if there are.
Chris, thanks for a great presentation.
May I ask?
Are there questions? Sure.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
First, thank you for the work. And I wish Michael Scroggins was here with our marketing, because I almost want to ask him, any idea how this level of brand saturation in such a limited amount of time? I mean, if you think about the span of the service the city, in terms of years that our city has provided transit service versus the amount of time that Embark as a brand exists, it's a small amount of time. Did you hear from our people? Where are they getting all this?
You'll have to give them all the credit for it. I can just report because I've actually seen some other systems change their brand and merge, and Embark is really setting the standard in doing that. But I don't know all the details that they do, but they're doing a great job.
Well, shout out to everyone who's doing that work. I just think that's incredible. And then just a comment, which is and I think this is a testament, I was just saying this to Jason and Brent yesterday, and so it's worth saying again in public, and especially so Embark staff hears it. The fact that during this global pandemic, when so much national conversations about public transit, as we were all very aware, was about maybe this is the end of public transit because people are going to be working from home, or fears about the virus. To see non-riders and riders express overwhelming support for increased funding, it wasn't just keep current levels, it was to keep going. That is, I hope y'all are as encouraged by that as I am. Sorry, I was so encouraged I hit my microphone. It's a true story. So I just wanted to ask that question and then give you that comment and just say to every single Embark staff member, just you have my heart for what you've done over this last year, and the results speak for themselves.
So Trustee Cooper, I just want to make a comment about that brand recognition. Let it be
Yes.
heard far and wide that if you put something on the side of a bus, thousands of people will see it and recognize it. And then I think that the buses running throughout the city with the word Embark on them help. And so we want our advertisers, our potential advertisers, to hear, that's a good idea. Put stuff on the side of a bus because thousands of people see it. But also, I think that Michael's work on social media, especially during our special events and during the time of COVID when we talked about what was happening with the system, I think that work has absolutely paid off in terms of people seeing stories about Embark that might never have paid attention to that before. Are there any other questions? Brent, Steve, Robert? No? Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation, Chris. Jason, I assume that all the trustees, including the ones that are not here today, will have a copy of the survey results so that they can review them? Great. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Next item on our agenda, since there are no votes to be taken on that, we'll just move on to that. The city council will receive a presentation of this, I believe, on the 6th, or is
No,
it the
it's
20th? The 20th of July.
Right.
Right. So Councilman Cooper will see it again, yes. The next item on our agenda today is residents to be heard. Do we have any residents here that would wish to speak at this time? Not seeing any, we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of the minutes. The minutes of June 4th, 2021 are included in your board packet. And I would be ready for a motion. Moved by Brent, seconded by James. Voting. Oh, I voted absent. That's not good. I'm not absent. Okay, so we'll entertain a voice vote from Robert. Are you voting yes? Yes, okay. Everyone else has voted? And that item is passed. The next item, the consent docket. If there are any items for individual discussion, I'd be happy to entertain that. Otherwise, we can move the docket in the whole. Still can't. So we have a motion and a second on the consent docket. Robert, are you voting yes?
Yes, I'm.
Thank you.
yes.
No pressure there. If you wanted to vote no, it would be okay. Okay. The next item on our agenda is items for individual consideration. Item A is a resolution of the trust authorizing application for 2021 U.S. Department of Transportation Rebuilding America Infrastructure and Sustainability and Equity Grant Program, also known as RAISE, and approving matching funds in the amount of $500,000, federal assistance in the amount of $1 million, and total project amount of $1.5 million. Mr. Fairbrush, do you have any comments about this item?
Yes, ma'am. Just a few comments for the trust. The RAISE program is a new grant program that replaces the BUILD grant program that I know we're all familiar with. We were successful in actually receiving a BUILD grant for our BRT. And then, of course, the predecessor to the BUILD was the TIGER. So it's that similar competitive grant program that's been around for many years now. But again, it has been rebranded and a few of the provisions changed, so it is now the RAISE grant. So with this application, what we are asking the trust to consider is that working relationship we have with the Regional Transit Authority of Central Oklahoma, recognizing the regional transit authorities work right now in terms of visioning high-capacity transit corridors in the region and studying those corridors to the point where we actually complete alternatives analysis and potentially submit one or more of those corridors to the FTA for funding considerations, right? So as you'll recall, the RTA recently adopted their transit plan, and they're moving forward with further study on 2 of the 4 corridors that were identified. And so, excuse me, by partnering with the RTA in this grant application, the idea would be if COTPA is successful in competing and receiving this grant, then we could use those funds to advance the RTA's planning efforts to study all 4 of the corridors versus the 2 that they're really concentrating on now. So the way this would work is similar to how we've done another grant agreement with the RTA, and that is if we are successful, COTPA, we will be the recipient of the grants, of the grant. The resolution that's before you pledges basically support of that grant application as well as $500,000 of local match. So that's basically a 33% funding match, if you will, on the entire project. We would then turn around and enter into an agreement with the RTA, basically a subrecipient type agreement, where the RTA would obviously make sure they, conform to all the federal regulations that are kind of tied to the funds, but more importantly, reimburse COTPA for that local match. So all that said to say it's a little bit unique in that it's a new grant program. If we're successful, the funds would really go to another entity, but it would be supporting the advancement of transit within the region. So finally, one other question that might come up is, well, could COTPA have applied for this grant for any current projects? And my response to that would be, at this point in time, no, because we really don't have any capital projects, new modes, if you will, that are far enough along in the planning stage to really compete. Now, looking forward and being optimistic that this RAISE program continues in the future years, there may be opportunities for us to apply for these funds in conjunction with some of our MAPS 4 transit projects, right? So we could leverage those MAPS funds as local dollars and maximize our chances of competing for federal grants for those type of projects. So all that said, again, to say we're not really compromising anything in my mind by applying for these funds really on behalf of the RTA at this time. So thank you for the lengthy explanation, but it's not an item we typically do or present to the trust.
Are there any questions for Jason? Okay, hearing none, we're ready to vote. It's been moved and seconded. Robert, would you like to voice your vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. And that item has passed. Next item, actually the next two items on our agenda have to do with litigation, and I believe that we will need to vote these separately, but it is customary that we would move those to executive session at the heel of the docket. So I would entertain a motion to move item B to the heel of the docket for executive session.
You'll have to do a voice.
Oh, voice vote on that?
Yeah,
Okay,
voice
sorry.
vote.
I'm new at this. So, Trustee Ruiz, how would you vote?
Aye.
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 I vote aye.
Did you get a formal second?
I don't know. Did I get a
I'll second it.
move? I didn't even know I got a move. So, there you
Okay.
go. Our next item is C. Again, I would entertain a motion to move this to the heel of the docket for executive session.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Hill, seconded by Bryant. Voice vote,
Aye.
Aye.
aye. The next item on our agenda is item D, enter into executive session on advice of the municipal counselor concerning a claim by Sfpg LLC. This item, I understand we will have a lack of quorum on, so we are advising to move to strike this item. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote? Oh, I guess we can vote on this one, huh? So voice vote. Ruiz? Yes?
Yes. I was able to vote now.
Okay. That is handled. The next item on our agenda is item 7, ratification of claims and payrolls. These are the payroll and vendor claims for the period June 2nd through June 29th, 2021. No buttons here for me. Maybe I need to. There we go.
Justin, is there anything you need to?
It's done.
No? Okay, never mind. It's
Moved
good.
by Bryant, seconded by Ruiz. Yay, he's got buttons back. Okay, that is ratified and approved. Next on our agenda, item 8, receive financial reports. Administrator Fairbrush.
All right, a few comments for the trust this morning. If I could direct your attention to page 2 of the budget to actual report. This is our transportation operations budget to actual that we look at each month. Couple of comments for you. Looking at the revenue section, would direct your attention to the federal grant revenue and the FTA CARES reimbursement revenue. That's about halfway down in the top section of your report that lists the different revenues. You'll notice we're right on track for federal grants. We're running a little over $300,000 behind what we had projected on our CARES reimbursement. Keep in mind, this is through 11 months of the fiscal year, so we do plan to draw that entire amount of CARES reimbursement that is budgeted. The other comment I have for you is looking down at expenditures. Personal services continue to exceed our budget. We've seen that now for several months in a row. We're actually at about 101% of what we had estimated through 11 months of the fiscal year. But those overages, if you will, are primarily being offset by the savings we have in the payments to the City of Oklahoma City Transportation Fund. That too is basically personal services costs that we transfer to the city for basically positions that are funded out of that city cash fund. And then on supplies and fuel, you can see supplies are running over on budget again, primarily due to extra supplies that we have purchased as a result of our COVID-19 response. As you know, we're able to be reimbursed for that, but that budget is being really offset by some savings in fuel. So overall, revenues and expenses are close to about 100% of what we'd expected through the 11 months of the fiscal year. Drawing your attention to the very bottom of the report, the operating loss or income, you can see through 11 months of the fiscal year, our expenses exceed our revenues by about $66,000. Looking on to the next, I believe we'll look at page 4 so we can talk about parking operations a bit. I won't spend a lot of time here because I know in Corey's presentation he's going to talk a little bit about some revenues, some changes in revenues that we've seen over the last month or so. But just kind of bottom lining it for you, total revenues are about where we had expected at just over 100% of what we had projected through 11 months of the fiscal year. Expenses remain under budget. They're about 86% of what we had projected. It's creating a operating income, if you will, of about $166,000 through 11 months of the fiscal year. But again, just as a reminder to the trust, we, and you can see in the footnote there that we actually have 2 months of expenses for Republic parking that are not reflected in these totals. The sum of those 2 months is approximately $250,000. So if you combine, that known expense with the overage we're currently showing, we would actually be operating at just a bit of a deficit through 11 months of the fiscal year. Again, that's not anything that wasn't anticipated. That's part of the reason why we took a budget amendment to the trust to allow us to budget some of our reserve funds for operations in this particular year. And then finally, I'll wrap my comments up with just directing you to the streetcar financial. That's on page 7. And again, through 11 months of the fiscal year, our revenues and expenses are pretty much where we had expected them to be through 11 months of the fiscal year. You can see I'll direct your attention to the bottom line there, that operating loss or income. Our revenues through 11 months of the fiscal year are $400,000 more than what our expenses are. Keep in mind, we do have May's expenses for Herzog that are not reflected in these totals. So by the time we get to the end of the year, we're really going to finish pretty much on budget for both revenues and expenses. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the administrator? Hearing none, a motion on receiving the report. And that is approved. The next item on our agenda is to receive the program reports. And I understand we'll have a parking system report. Good morning, Corey.
Good morning. Happy new fiscal year.
Happy new fiscal year.
As you know, we do a every other year audit. We bring in an outside parking consultant to audit our operations, financials, and systems. The Walker audit, part 2, I should say. This is their second year, so we'll see an RFP coming for services in the near future. Task 1 is very operational audit, gets really into the weeds. Anywhere from staff cleanliness to all the way through SOP removal, review our standard operating procedures, signage, management reports, and access to the revenue control system based off of the many users that utilize the system. Also to include in task 2, a second part of the operational audit is revenue control collection processes and policies, parking agreements, and time card audits. Just highlighting on some of the bigger items and the smaller items of the audit rather than reading the whole entire list. In task 3, they do a national search over other like parking agreements to compare our incentive fees and management fees to others equally sized operations in both quantity of spaces, staffing, and complexity. Staff 4 really gets into the technology. Our last review, which was completed about 2 years ago, they went in and evaluated our current parking system. We did an upgrade through the COVID summer last year. During that time, or prior to that upgrade, they reviewed our future implementations that occurred in last summer and commented on those. They also looked at the pros and cons of integrating with Pike Pass, and then again, credit card processing security features. That report came back very positive. The Walker consultants were on site the week of April 12th, May 11th, and June 11th. And again, we're waiting to see the draft report later this month. Parking revenues. Up here we have fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20, and fiscal year 21. Fiscal year 21 in red and 19 in blue, I think, are the true indicators as COVID was COVID. In April and May, we just started seeing some events pop up. June was pretty active. Arts Festival, unaudited numbers for Arts Festival revenues. We were about 65-75% of pre-COVID Arts Festival. So that was encouraging. Monthly revenues, again, focusing on fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 21. In December, In January, in blue, you'll see a significant drop-off in monthly revenues. That was the sale of the Santa Fe garage, in which we lost a huge client and a few others. So in looking at January through June, you can see in April, May, we're getting real close. May, we had 90% of what we had in fiscal year 19. Indicates to me that people are coming back to the office. Transient revenues, happy to report, in May, revenues exceeded fiscal year 19 by 30%. So that we can get past talking about the new parking garage, our art placard and dedication plaques have been installed. We installed them at the southwest corner, the main pedestrian entry and access point. Justin will zoom in and show you better pictures of the art of the two plaques. That concludes the presentation. Any questions?
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Next, we have another presentation, but I turned my agenda over, so maybe you can remind me.
Mobility management.
Mobility management. Good morning.
Good morning. It's wonderful to see everyone.
It is.
I've not actually seen you face to face like this to give a presentation in 11 months. It was August of 2020. So this is exciting, and it kind of aligns with my presentation because I'm going to give you 11 months of data. So let's get started. Go ahead. So the first thing, I hope you all indulge me here just a little bit, since we do have some newer trustees. I wanted to take just a few minutes to give some background and funding on the sources of these things. So our senior services, we do these in Oklahoma and Canadian County. This is a 36-year-long partnership with the Area-Wide Aging Agency. We use Older Americans Act grant funding. We have a whole suite of services for this. COVID was a challenge for us. We are dealing with a group of individuals who are often immune compromised. They're older, they have health problems. So we had to really take a hard look at what we were doing. And I'm pleased to tell you that with the cooperation of Eugene's safety team, we were able to get all of our subcontractor drivers classified as essential workers and get them vaccinated, so we never lost a day of service for the pandemic. We lost a day of service in the snowstorm, and we lost a day of service in the ice storm, but the pandemic did not take us down. So that's important. Overall, ridership. A little over 24,000 trips so far in the 11 months. We're about to close out June, and I will put an updated full years of data in your packet next month so that you can review that. It's not as bad as it sounds. It's about 50%, about 50% of our ridership pre-COVID. However, when you combine senior services with all the additional care services we were able to add, and the increased demand that we had in our homeless and low-income programs during the pandemic, our overall ridership across mobility management only dropped about 7%. So let's talk a little bit about the individual services here. So I'll go back. Okay, so our daily meal trips. This was one of the congregate meal site programs. They run daily, Monday through Friday. We have 10 locations with the Oklahoma County Senior Nutrition across the city. Obviously, during COVID, those closed. That was a very big problem for us. These daily meal sites are where the seniors go every day to get lunch. They have activities, they have socialization, they play games. Those type of things are critical to seniors that live alone. Social isolation is the #1 reason for early death in seniors. So closing these meal sites was a huge decision for us, and we had to look for ways to help them, make sure they were getting the nutrition they needed. Well, I'm going to cry here in a minute when I tell you about this, because it made my heart smile when my staff started doing this. Every week, everyone got a phone call. Not about their trips, just a phone call. Just talk. And so it was wonderful. The other thing that we did to kind of transition is we have obviously daily 10 routes. That's a lot of vehicles that are just going to sit. So we got together with Oklahoma County Senior Nutrition and the Community Action Agency. We repurposed every single one of those vehicles, used CARES money to outfit them so they could transport flash frozen meals. And then we're now delivering 2,500 flash frozen meals a month. And we've been doing that since March of 2020. feeding all those seniors. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I am thrilled to tell you we have 2 more sites opening in July, and then they will all be back open again. The ridership is climbing very slowly. The seniors are still a little bit nervous about leaving the house, but we are seeing that go up, so we're thrilled with that. The other service, weekly shopping, that did not stop during COVID. Ridership dropped substantially, but it did not stop because the seniors still need to go buy groceries. One of the things we learned during COVID was really interesting. Our weekly shopping service is always assumed the senior has the funds to go shopping. What we learned during COVID is there's a whole area that we were missing, and that's the people that receive the monthly food boxes from the regional food bank. So they reached out to us during COVID because they were trying to work with other delivery services and it was not working out for them. So they reached out to us and said, can you help? And we said, sure. So we deliver 250 boxes to the for the regional food bank every month. It's about an average. It goes up and down a little bit. We just got a new list for this next coming month in July, and they have added 130 seniors to that list. So we are filling a need that we honestly did not even know was there, and the pandemic revealed that to us. So we're really thrilled about that. We do plan to continue that service. Post-COVID, we will continue to deliver food boxes every month. We're also going to add transportation routes in the coming months with Regional Food Bank. We're going to start with the 2 of their food distribution centers that are now reopening in July and August. One of them is down on South Shields. The other one is over at Evangeline Baptist Church in the northeast part of Oklahoma City. We're going to start with those. That's not all we're going to do. We're just going to start. That's the way we like to do things. We pilot, make sure we work out all the kinks, and then roll it out fully. So we will be starting those soon. It'll be a monthly route rather than a weekly shopping route, but it'll enable seniors that want to go actually shop at the food pantry because it is a shopping food pantry. Skyline has one as well, and we are in discussions with them about trying to start a monthly route to that as well when the food pantry's open. So we're thrilled with all of those things. The one place we saw a huge increase was our non-emergency medical trips during COVID. Those went up substantially. They're up 43% year over year. We did get additional CARES funding through the Area-Wide Aging Agency to provide those trips. And another thing I have to mention to you is our partners at ODOT, DHS, and Area-Wide Aging Agency were gracious enough to share their CARES funding with us so that we could buy sanitation supplies and masks for our vehicles, and we did not have to use our CARES monies for that. So the entire $80,000 that we got for CARES went to providing trips. We didn't have to do anything else. So that was a major deal too, as well as the amount of coordination and partnership that happened with these services during COVID. It was something to watch, let me tell you what. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about vaccines under CARES, because I know that vaccine access has been a very big topic. We do have free trips to get a vaccine. We will take them, wait for the waiting period, and then take them back home. We have not seen a lot of demand for that. We hit 150 trips early on as soon as we started offering it, and that's about where we are now. We get maybe 1 or 2 requests a week. So I encourage you, if you know anyone that still needs a trip for that, it is absolutely, and that covers also the pneumonia and the flu vaccine or any other vaccine that a senior would have. It is a free trip. Okay, go ahead. So even in COVID, as ETC, we went ahead and did our annual senior survey. Looked a little different this year, had to do it over the phone. Didn't have as many people participate in the survey as we have in the past, but we did get 65% response rate, which is very respectable for surveying 100 individuals. As you can see, about half of them, they're between 60 and 74, and a little over half are female. That number for females versus males has been a lot different in past years, and so it's nice to see that we're getting a more mix of individuals and getting more individual males that live alone going for the services. Another interesting thing that we learned in the survey is we have a substantial number of people on our services that are over 85 years of age. And they are still active, still going daily. Some of those are regular riders that ride with us almost every day. Another interesting thing we noted was you'll see that 20% of them were using it for less than 1 year. So even during COVID, we were still able to reach out to and get new participants. So that's exciting. Satisfaction is very high with these services. 100% of them rated them from good to excellent. They're very satisfied with the drivers, the availability, and the on-time performance. We do have a short summary of the survey, and we'd be happy to provide it if anybody would like to see a copy of it. Just feel free to send me an email or let Jason know, and we'll get you taken care of. Okay, go ahead. So we've been talking a lot about CARES. So nutrition access, what we've learned, is a really important thing. One of the things that we're excited to announce is we had for many, many years 19 weekly grocery shopping routes. A few months ago, we opened, the market at East Point opened in April, and we have launched our 20th grocery store in grocery route in Northeast Oklahoma City, serving that route. Homeland will open later in the fall. That will become our 21st grocery route. And then, of course, I mentioned to you that we're also planning on adding the 2 regional food bank distribution sites, as well as the Skyline Pantry in the coming months.
Marilyn?
Yes, sir.
On those routes, are those just weekly, or are they like on a Monday and a Thursday, or how does that work with the?
You mean the shopping routes,
Yeah.
the grocery shopping routes? They run Monday through Friday.
Okay.
And each route runs on a different day. For example, the one at the market at East Point runs on Monday morning. The reason we do it that way is because that way we can utilize, we have 8 vehicles. And so those 8 vehicles do all of those routes, because they may do one on Monday and then they go to a different area of the city on Tuesday and then Wednesday. So it's just based on their residence of what their shopping day would be. They get about an hour to shop, and then we do take them back home, and they do get assistance in putting their groceries on their porch for them. So.
Okay, that's a great service.
So I wanted to give you a little brief update on Embark Well. And as you'll recall, this is our senior health and wellness program that we started in January of 2019. This service was one of those ones that kind of comes out of personal experience. As many of you know, I had a heart attack in 2018 and had to go through cardiac rehab. I met a lovely lady in cardiac rehab. She was supposed to be my cardiac rehab partner. And I was supposed to do it and go through the process with her. She was 90 years old, and she was a wonderful lady. She was there Monday, she was there Tuesday, and then Wednesday came around and she was not there. Thursday came around and she was not there. So by Friday, I'm going to the gentleman that's doing our cardiac rehab class and saying, where's she at? I thought she was supposed to be my partner. His response was, her Medicaid only pays for 2 days a week. I said, how many times a week is she supposed to go? And he said 5. I was like, okay. So Jason actually came to me. It was kind of serendipity right about the same time. Said, we got some extra grant money. We need to close this new Freedom Grant out. Do you have an idea? Yes, I do. I do have an idea. So Embark Well was born. And just so you know, I went and got her the rest of the days, and she finished cardiac rehab, just so y'all are clear. But this is Embark Well. So Embark Well was born. It has risen from 8 locations to 10 now. When the 2 remaining MAPS 3 senior health and wellness centers open, those will be locations 11 and 12. So we're thrilled with that. This year, it has started back up. Everything's opened back up around July. During COVID, all of the obviously workout facilities and wellness centers were closed, so we did almost no trips. But it is increasing, and we've done 413 so far this year. The first year of this, we spent about $8,500 to provide 800 trips to seniors to go work out. This is available Monday through Friday. It is round trip, no cost, and door to door. So we're about half that right now, but we are going back up, and we are seeing an increase every month, as you can see here, and I'm anxious to see what June's numbers are going to look like. Another little partnership project that we've done under Embark Well is a program called On the Road to Health. The Lynn Institute and the Healthy Community Collaborative in Northeast Oklahoma City has partnered with Skyline to offer these classes to seniors. It's designed to help them learn how to cook and prepare meals, exercises that are age appropriate for them, and to help address diabetes and heart disease issues. It's a 12-week class, and we are providing under Embark Well transportation for 10 participants to attend that class. And they started in May, and they'll finish in 12 weeks, so that's exciting. So go ahead. The last one I want to talk to you about is our Community Development Block Grant Program. We get about $105,000 a year from the City of Oklahoma City's Planning Department, and we are so appreciative of their partnership and their willingness to work with us to offer the type of services that are needed at the time that they're needed. This is the program we did not see a drop in demand. In fact, we saw a bit of an increase in demand for bus passes in the homeless and low-income area during the pandemic. The emergency taxi rides are often used by the YWCA to evacuate domestic violence victims for emergency situations quickly. We provide them those funds, and they have a direct line to the taxi company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get someone out if they need to. So we've done 311 of those this year, and then 970 share fare trips. Share fare is a trip subsidy program. We pay the first $4 up to 52 trips a year for seniors and individuals with disability, and then they pay the remaining balance of the fare. This is an application-based process, so we work with about 65 social service agencies. They distribute the bus passes for us and collect the demographic data that we need for the grant reporting. Another partnership that is kind of spurred out of this one is working with CityCare to provide dental care to the homeless. And by dental care, I don't mean go get your teeth cleaned. This is major dental work that has been deferred for years and years. Some of these individuals have never seen a dentist before. So we have provided 9 trips to the homeless under this program to get major dental work done, and that'll continue. The CityCare was able to get a grant from Delta Dental to fund the care, and we're funding the getting them there. So we're excited about that. And then last but not least is our Climb Ride program. This is our Arnold Family Foundation grant. If you'll recall, we got this a couple years ago as a joint project with the Community Transportation Association of America and the OTA. So far, since the launch of the program, we are in full launch now. We are in all offices in DHS in Oklahoma County. We've provided 4,061 trips, and we've celebrated our first family reunification in July of 2020. We've had 3 more recently, and altogether we have reunified 18 families out of the foster care system. And that is the goal of this program, is to reduce the time to reunification, which in Oklahoma County is over 18 months. That means once a child is removed from the home, they spend 18 months in foster care. Each individual family gets what's called an individualized service plan of classes and training that they need to take in order to reunify their family, and the biggest barrier to finishing that is getting there. And so that is our job. The unique thing about this compared to all of our other services is this is a full wraparound model, which means our mobility coordinator for the Climb Ride program is embedded with DHS. In fact, she actually offices 1 day a week out of DHS so that she can meet directly with participants and caseworkers. Our goal in this grant was to reduce the time to reunification, so I want to give you a little case study. And we had a gentleman, a father, who started with us in April of 2019. We provided all of his trips during his case. He closed it 3 months earlier. He was reunified with his 3 children last month. So it was a success story. Every single one of the 18 reunifications we've done so far have been less than 18 months. So we are making an impact. The other big thing, which also goes along with this project, was developing travel training. In other words, we didn't want to just help them through their case. We wanted to set them up for success going forward. So we developed a travel training program. We developed a transit familiarity scale. All of our program graduates have reduced their score from a 6 to a 3, which 6 means you don't know anything about transit, to a 3. So we're excited to see that. It's a really, really good program. In fact, it has worked so well to help them do that, that when they graduate, they get a year's bus pass on the Embark system. Every single one of them is using it because obviously I write down the pass number because I want to know if it's effective. Every single one of them is using it. They're going back to work every day. This is a huge success. This is a huge success. We are working with DHS leadership to look for a long-term funding source to continue this project. There is interest in expanding it to other counties. The embedded and wraparound model has been so much more successful than we ever thought it would be. One of the unintended and positive results has been that by having the mobility coordinator, who's Stephanie Davis is her name, having her embedded with DHS frees up the caseworkers to work on the case, because Stephanie is having daily communication with those participants to arrange their trips. So if we see a pull away, if we see a lack of engagement, if we see those parents slipping a little bit left and right, we can get them back on track much, much earlier, because the caseworker only sees them maybe once a week, maybe once a month. Stephanie sees them daily or talks to them daily, and so she's able to really step into that and stop the slide before it happens, and we've been successful in pulling several families back from the brink and get them pointed in the right direction, so we're very excited about that. And then last here we have Palomar. This is a microtransit partnership. We're testing some different models as we go forward and see what's new and see what works. This is Dan McKeon's operations team and my team are working together on this project. It's been a little over a year in the planning stages. We started out just providing them some on-demand transportation services through one of our subcontractors while we worked out the logistics of doing an actual microtransit partnership. Originally, they were partnered with the Oklahoma City Police Department to provide transportation. That program, we just basically repurposed public funds to provide this service, free up resources at the police department, and also help Palomar and the participants at Palomar as well. So they have a dedicated driver in a vehicle. This is our lovely van. We're quite pleased with the graphics and the color scheme that Michael's team came up with for this. In the first 10 days, we provided 34 trips. This driver is, again, an embedded model. She is at Palomar with the vehicle and is available to take trips. We're excited how it's going. And it is going to make government more efficient, make Palomar more efficient, and much like the Arnall project, our hope is by removing that transportation barrier, we're also facilitating success. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Marilyn?
Not a question, just as always, gratitude. It's just going to be gushing everything I say. It's just, I'm serious. It's just wonderful, and I'm so glad you all were there prior to the pandemic, because it's just clear that the work you were already doing set you up for the success that you all had. And just hearing you talk about the seniors who were just just to talk. That's just,
And I will say, it wasn't just my team. Our paratransit schedulers did the same thing with all of our paratransit customers that live alone and don't have family here. Especially if they were regular riders and we suddenly stopped hearing from them, we were reaching out to find out if everything was okay. Do you need anything? Do you have enough groceries? Do we need to set you up for delivery?
Tell those folk thank you, because I'm realizing suddenly the connection to a 911 dispatcher. They're really at the front line, right, of that connection. So yes, just thank you. I really could go on, and people know.
And I'm also very, very excited. And it sounds like a strange thing to say in a pandemic, but the pandemic has revealed some gaps that none of the social service agencies really saw. But because we were coordinating and talking so much more, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months, because there's a lot of conversations going on that weren't going on before the pandemic.
So you mentioned the food bank was kind of a moment you all realized. What were some of the other main, because that's all I keep hearing on a national level and have experienced at the local level is suddenly we realized just what a decades-long kind of lack of
I think one of the
emphasizing
big
this.
things that we've really been looking at is two things. The social isolation aspect of what this pandemic revealed, and the fact that it's how important it is to get a senior out of their house, to get them to have social interaction with others. One of the things that the survey revealed from the seniors, obviously, was that they always ask for service on Saturday and Sunday because our programs only operate Monday through Friday. So that's another gap that we want to address for the senior population, because things don't happen Monday through Friday. Things happen on Saturday and Sunday as well, and they need to be able to access those. The other big gap that we noticed is we're actually in Dr. Marcia Herron with Oklahoma City Public Schools is working on that Family Connect in the public school system to do a wraparound service thing. And transportation is a huge gap that's being revealed through those conversations with Dr. Herron. And so we're anxious to see how that goes, where that goes.
Did you just connect public transit with public education before our very
did.
eyes?
I so went there.
Talking my language, friend. I love it. Thank you for
I
that.
appreciate you all. Have a wonderful 4th.
Hey, Marilyn, I'm sorry, while I just wanted to also share with the trustees, particularly with the Palomar program. I don't know why my mic is echoing here.
I'm trying to stay back.
It's your magnetic personality.
I've never heard that before. Anyway, just recognizing the fact that that's a new transportation model for us, and that we partnered with the ATU on that, and that one of our fixed route bus operators actually transitioned over to that specialized service, and also received some special training in order to serve that clientele, so.
In fact, all of our bus operators have now completed the trauma-informed training that was developed for the R&all program. We've been very, very pleased with the bus operator that signed on to this. She's been integral to the team. As you know, when you pilot a service, it's often a whole lot of, oh, that's a problem. Okay, let's fix it and move on. Oh, that's a problem. Oh, wait, that's not going to work the way we thought it was going to. And she's been very instrumental with that, very communicative about, and has come up with several very good ideas on how to track the trips and her arrival and departure time. So we've been very, very pleased with the partnership.
Are there any other questions for Marilyn? I just want to add, Marilyn, thank you very much. I, too, am just moved by some of the services that are continuing and new, and there's no doubt in my mind why you were chosen for the Oklahoma Transit Association Person of the Year.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate
That's
that.
awesome.
I do love my job.
And I do want to commend your leadership in this area, and also Jason for letting you come with ideas and flexibility, because I
Yes.
think it reflects on our whole transit mission to provide excellent service to our community.
Right. And I was really, really very pleased to see in the ETC results that our citizens recognize how
Right.
important these services are to others. So,
Right.
thank you all.
Thank you. Our next item is the Northwest BRT Program Report. Is this our first official Northwest BRT Program Report from the podium?
Official, yeah.
Awesome.
Morning, Chair.
We have it scheduled for a monthly report now, yes, so.
Awesome. Jesse?
Good morning, Chairperson Johnson, trustees. Not sure how I follow up Marilyn's presentation, the proof of what transit can do for folks in our world. So it's huge. Thank you. Yeah. So we'll just jump right into it. I didn't do that. Hands are right here. There we go. All right. So yes. So the Northwest BRT. So we'll start off with the schedule of the project. So we're currently in engineering. So we just wrapped up our 30% design in October. We're quickly moving into our 60% design. We anticipate that 60% design submittal in July. And then, so what happens after that 60% design submittal? So what we'll do with that is we'll submit it to our Public Works Department, our Utilities Department, Drainage, our Planning Department, and they'll all get an opportunity to review that set of drawings. So the 60% design is essentially the 30% design further advanced. And they'll provide comments on that 60% design. We'll provide that back to our engineers, and then they'll take those comments and incorporate them or provide comments back to us to those comments. But also from 60% design to our 95% design, that's also when we begin our utility conference and our right-of-way acquisition. So our utility conferences are when we reach out to the public and private utility companies. So we'll be reaching out to AT&T and then also our own utility department to identify any utilities that may be in conflict with our stops and to work to get those relocated. And then also our right-of-way acquisition. So that includes any permanent right-of-way that we may be purchasing or any temporary right-of-way, right? So there may be some area that may be needed to purchase to be able to perform work to essentially construct our stations. And so we'll be working on that also. So then, can you go back one more? Yep, sorry. So then we'll receive our 95% design in December. And then between December and March of 2022, we'll be working on finalizing that design. But we'll also go through a process of value engineering. So essentially taking a look at our project and seeing if there are certain things that we can maybe add to a deductive alternate or something like that, just to make sure that we come in under budget and keep the project moving forward. And then with our 100% design in March, we'll be submitting that for bid advertisement and then moving into construction start date. So not to worry anyone, but we are officially less than 12 months away from beginning construction of the Northwest BRT. Let me gather myself. All right. So yes, so then we'll begin construction June of 2022, and then construction completion July of 2023. So again, so there's a little bit of gap between that July and October date of going into revenue service. What will we be doing as an agency? We'll be going through the testing and commissioning of our project, right? So we're not just going to build something and then 2 days later, go into revenue operation, and then come to find out our bus can't properly berth at the station, right? Be able to pull up to that station and be able to still maintain that ADA access. So we'll be doing a lot of construction or compliance testing in those months leading up to that revenue service. All right, prepare yourself. So this is super dry presentation, so I tried to liven it up with a little animation. So going to walk you through our bus procurement schedule. So May 7th, we brought the RFP to the board. That is complete. See, it changes green when I point to it. How about that, right? So now we're moving along to our RFP advertisement. So that happened on May 12th. Complete. Yeah, magic, I'm telling you, right? So then we moved into our non-mandatory pre-proposal meeting. That was May 26th. That's complete. And now moving along to question deadlines. So that's when our proposers have an opportunity to submit any questions that they may have or approved equals. So we went through that process of reviewing those. And then moving into our next step here, the proposals were due on June 16th, but our proposers requested a little additional time to be able to provide appropriate submittals. So we extend that time to June 30th. That allows us to give them a little bit more time, but still be able to meet our continuing deadlines, which are, so we're planning on bringing the contract to the August board, August 6th, and then moving into bus construction, and then moving into anticipated first delivery of our first bus, April 6th of 2022, and then our final delivery of all of the remaining buses. Our contract states February 6th of 2023. However, all of our proposers are submitting earlier dates, specifically looking at around July of 2022. So that's huge for us. So that would allow us to get our buses quite a bit earlier and allow us to be able to, again, begin that training and things like that. So it'd be huge for us. But the February 6th date is our date in our contract, so we anticipate being able to meet that. All right, so moving into the main part of the presentation here. So Jason and I kind of discussed what we would do to be able to provide a presentation to the board. So what we decided to do is we would focus on a specific topic of the engineering or the project, and then kind of dig into the weeds a little bit about that. So our topic of discussion today is crosswalks. So the City of Oklahoma City adopted the MUTCD for guidance on developing and engineering our crosswalks within Oklahoma City. So this is kind of just an outline of what that MUTCD does. So it outlines the crosswalk markings and signs and other markings kind of dictated along traffic, but we're going to focus on crosswalks. So the very first slide here is transverse lines, right? So this is Northwest 5th and Hudson, just to kind of tie it back to our city. So what happens is you can look at crosswalks in two different ways. So you can look at transverse lines, or you can look at the Continental Striping, right? So we're going to take a look at transverse lines. So typically, transverse lines have to be either 6 inches wide or up to 24 inches in width. Most of ours are between 6 and 8 inches wide. And so what that does, those transverse lines, they kind of outline an area of refuge, right, to be able to cross a street safely. The idea is to be able to cross the street safely. You know, sometimes automobiles may pull up past that stop bar, that large white line, and intrude into the crosswalks, but hopefully most people stay behind those stop bars, but essentially giving us a safe place to cross traffic and be able to get to the sidewalk on the other side of the street. And then moving into, so typically those transverse lines are separated about 6 feet, right? So we have about 6 feet, an area of refuge to be able to cross the street safely. That's typical, and that's typical within Oklahoma City. And then moving on to what's called Continental Striping. So this is what you see typically in the Project 180 areas. That is made up of 12 to 24 inches wide striping that make up the Continental Striping. And the design of that is to also allow gaps in that Continental Striping for automobile tires to be able to cross through to try to keep the wear down on that paint. And then also the requirement for the Continental Striping is 6 feet. What we've seen mostly downtown with the Project 180 is 20 feet, right? So giving that extra wide area for pedestrians to be able to cross, right? So how does that tie into our project? didn't work. There we go. All right, so the City of Oklahoma City Public Works Department has developed a lot of standard details, right? So we're using these details to help guide the design of our project. So this is a slide from, you can find these details online, and a lot of engineers will use these details to help develop their project, and we're doing the same thing. HNTB is using the typical details for our project. So this is A, yep, perfect, and this is B. So again, many details to choose from. We're using this to help guide our design. And then tying into our project, so this is Northwest 23rd and Classen. So we anticipate this to be a large area for pedestrian crossings, right? Because this is going to be an area where our normal bus routes tie into our bus rapid transit system. So I've talked several times about how these stops at this area will have larger shelters, right? So the idea is that transition. But we also anticipate higher pedestrian traffic at this intersection, not only because we already see it, right? There's already large pedestrian traffic at this intersection, but with the addition of the Northwest BRT, we're anticipating higher. So this was our 30% design. You can see that the Continental Striping here is a little narrower than maybe what we would want, right? So Councilperson Cooper has brought up that we want to make sure that we prioritize pedestrians. Again, the being able to access our stops is how we increase ridership also, so we want to make sure that people feel safe accessing our stops. So we're going back to our engineers, and anywhere where we can, we're going to widen that Continental Striping. So our anticipation is that moving forward in our engineering examples like this, you'll see that much wider Continental Striping where the area is available to be able to do that. So that's Northwest 23rd and Classen. And the next slide will show Northwest Expressway and North Penn. So again, we've got, our 30% design shows slightly smaller Continental Striping width. Moving forward, we anticipate widening that out as much as we possibly can, but I also wanted to make sure that we took a chance to focus on this intersection, again, because we're anticipating higher pedestrian access at this intersection due to the trip generators of Penn Square Mall, the Oak development, 50 Penn Place, and then all the new development that's coming along this section of the corridor. So again, we're going to widen our access, but one thing I wanted to point out here is one of the things that we're doing during the design is, I don't know if anybody's attempted to cross Northwest Expressway on foot, may not recommend it, but our design is going to increase the safety of that, right? So we looked at two possible options. One option was to build a refuge island in the middle of Northwest Expressway. During that process, we all felt that nobody would feel safe standing in the middle of Northwest Expressway in a small island. So what we're doing is we're taking away that area of refuge, but we're making it, we're extending the crosswalk times, right? So working with Public Works, I believe, please do not hold me on this, but I believe it's about 3 foot per second or something like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you feel safe being able to cross Northwest Expressway with the PED signal, right? So make sure that we allow enough time that whether you're a fast walker, you're a slow walker, or you're in a mobility device, you feel safe to be able to cross Northwest Expressway. And again, going back to that schedule that we talked about earlier where we're going to go through the testing and commissioning. So one of the things that we would be testing and commissioning would be this intersection to make sure that we're literally going to push the button and cross to make sure that everyone can, no matter your speed of walk, that you feel safe to be able to cross this intersection before we go into revenue service. Okay. And then finally, very last slide, just want to remind everybody that Embark is offering its half-price sale right now from July 1 to July 9th. And just have to thank Mr. Scroggins for this awesome motion slide, right? Try to keep it fun. So that's my presentation. Be happy to take any questions, concerns, comments.
Thanks, Jesse. Are there any questions for Jesse?
Just a comment. You were worried about. I'm not doing anything. I don't know why it did that to you all. I'm so sorry. The feedback. Did y'all hear that? Okay. It's okay. We're back. I know you were worried about following the mobility management report, but actually, whatever universe made it possible to have both presentations back to back for me, I'm walking on sunshine. It's true. So thank you both, and I'm just so thrilled to hear that crosswalk conversation. I never knew how excited I would be to hear crosswalk conversations. And I'm really curious to learn more over time about the timing of the signals. I think that's something I stupidly hadn't thought about until these recent conversations, but I think that's going to mean a whole lot. And then, as you did, kind of tying it back to folk with disabilities, just thinking about someone in a motorized wheelchair there at Northwest Expressway in Penn, crossing from Oak to Penn Square today. Whew.
Right.
But by the time this project finds itself complete, that will truly become transformative, which but I just felt worth saying to commend the work everyone's doing. So thank you.
Thank you. All righty.
Yeah, I'd like to thank James for planting that Walking on Sunshine song in my head now. So, if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to receive our reports.
Thank you.
And the reports are received. Thank you. Our next item is items from trustees, and we'll entertain comments from everyone except Councilman Cooper, who has already contributed enough today. Nope. James, do you have anything?
Just more Walking on Sunshine lyrics for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent? Steve? Robert, any comments?
For trustee comments?
Yes.
I received the rendering of the parking garage, of the signage, and I had some concerns about that. Are we able to discuss that right now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I feel like that could potentially create some confusion as to who's operating that garage.
Oh, the garage, the private garage operation?
It's a private garage that has signage that's identical to our signage on our garages. So I would hate for there to be confusion about who's operating the garage in terms of, pricing, in terms of if we're doing some sort of, special, or we're waiving fees, or just general operation of cleanliness and other difficulties that people may have, and then get confused and complain to the city about it, or reflect badly on our ability to operate garages, even though it's not our garage. And so I have some concerns in that area, and I'd like to discuss if
So
anyone else has concerns.
I share your concern. I'm not sure legally what we could do to change that. I know that we don't have a trademark on that sign. We don't have any kind of permission to retain that sign, but I do think that our administrator could express that concern to the Planning Commission through an official letter from the trust that might convey our concerns about that. I know Jason, I know Corey also already experienced a lack of awareness sometimes about who owns what parking downtown. I just recently saw a complaint that came through from someone who was sure that we had his car booted or towed or something off of a private lot that we did not have any influence over. So I think your concern is very warranted. And I guess we don't have to necessarily vote on expressing that concern to the Planning Commission, but if the rest of the trustees would give me an indication of if they're concerned about that also.
Well, I know we asked me not to add more comment, but I feel like this might be a moment. No, thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for bringing it to our attention as well, Jason, and I believe Chairperson Johnson. Yeah, like when I saw that signage, I just looked at it and I was like, ooh, I guess imitation is the best form of flattery. I don't know
Flattery,
the quote.
yeah.
I know the quote. I'm still back in Sunshine Land. So yeah, I do have that, and the way you've expressed the concern is even, that makes the problem more clear to me than it even had been reading about it, because I feel like the service we provide when it comes to parking is quite good. And I would hate for a resident to confuse our service with something less than that. So yes, consider that a second.
So yes, as staff, we're happy then to explore whatever options we have, including even having a discussion with the property owner if it comes to that. But we'll certainly get to work on it and keep the trust informed.
Okay. Is there anything else from the trustees? Hearing nothing else, I would indicate that we are moving to executive session. We will return to vote on individual items B and C, and then followed by adjournment. Okay, having returned from executive session, we're ready to vote on item 6B. Authorize and direct the municipal council to prepare and file any and all necessary paperwork to effectuate a settlement of the journal entry of judgment, confessing judgment on behalf of the COTPA authority without admitting liability in the case of Jewel K. Coffee versus the City of Oklahoma City and COTPA in the District Court of Oklahoma County. I would entertain a motion. And voting. Mine's a little slow to respond. Okay, that item has been approved. And on item 6C, authorize and direct the council to prepare and file any and all necessary paperwork to effectuate settlement, including a journal entry of judgment, confessing judgment on behalf of the COTPA and on behalf of COTPA without admitting liability in the case of Monica Armstrong versus the City of Oklahoma City and COTPA, claim number 19-273. I will entertain a motion. Oh, you guys are way ahead of me today. And that item has been approved. If there are no other items before us today, move to adjourn.